Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku led the Justice League after Superman disappeared. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The world had learned to live under the sun. It was a simple, unspoken truth, a foundational pillar of modern existence. The sun rose in the east, the world turned, and Superman was in the sky. One of those truths was now a lie, and the other two felt far less certain. It had been 7 days. 7 days since the Man of Steel, the anchor of Earth's superhuman community, and the living embodiment of hope for billions, had vanished. Not in a blaze of glory, not in a heroic sacrifice witnessed by a grateful planet, but silently, inexplicably, as if he had simply ceased to be. One moment he was stopping a runaway maglev train in Tokyo. The next, he was gone. No energy signature, no cosmic trail, no dying words. Just a void. The global reaction was a tidal wave of grief and fear. News channels ran 24/7 retrospectives, their logos adorned with a mournful black S shield. In Metropolis, a mountain of flowers, letters, and teddy bears grew at the base of his statue in Centennial Park, a spontaneous shrine to a god who had walked among them. Pundits on every network debated the implications. The strategic vacuum left by Superman's disappearance cannot be overstated. A retired general stated gravely on CNN. He wasn't just a deterrent, he was the deterrent. Every hostile nation, every would-be alien invader, had to factor him into their equations. That factor is now zero. It's the silence that's most terrifying. A tearful Lois Lane had said in a rare, heavily guarded press conference, her voice raw but steady. He promised he'd always be there. For him to be gone like this, it means something took him. Something that he couldn't fight. What are we supposed to do against something like that? On the Justice League watchtower, orbiting 22,300 miles above a planet holding its breath, the silence was a physical presence. The command center, usually a hub of calm activity and quiet conversation, was a tomb. The central chair at the conference table, custom built to accommodate Kryptonian physiology, remained starkly, brutally empty. John Johns, the Martian Manhunter, stood before the main viewport, his green skin reflecting the blue and white marble of the earth below. As a telepath of immense power, he felt the loss not just as an absence, but as a psychic wound upon the collective consciousness of humanity. It was a dull, persistent throb of anxiety, a background radiation of fear that had seeped into the dreams of every man, woman, and child. For 7 days he had borne witness to it, but worse was the silence from the League itself. He could feel the turmoil churning within his teammates, each of them a vortex of contained, conflicting emotions. He reached out, not to intrude, but to check in, his mind a gentle whisper across their secure comlink. "Batman! Report." The response was instantaneous, clipped, and devoid of warmth, like stones clattering in a metal bucket. "No new leads. I've cross-referenced every known form of energy, matter, and dimensional transportation. Zatanna confirms no magical involvement of this magnitude. The Lantern Corps' cosmic scans of the sector are negative. Flash's temporal resonance scans are clean. He wasn't taken. He was erased. Any theory, no matter how improbable?" John pressed softly. A pause, filled with the faint sound of furious typing. "The absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence. I'm expanding the search parameters to include theoretical trans-reality phasing. It's a dead end. They're all dead ends. I'll keep searching." The connection cut. John sighed, a sound like rustling leaves. Bruce was burying his grief under a mountain of data, hoping to build a wall of logic so high he wouldn't have to look at the hole in their lives. It was his way. In the deepest recesses of the Batcave, the air was cold and stale, smelling of damp stone, ozone, and the bitter aroma of coffee brewed 3 days ago and left to congeal. Bruce Wayne hadn't seen the sun since it had set on the day Clark disappeared. He sat before the Bat computer, his cowl off, the exhaustion plain on his face. Dark stubble shadowed his jaw, and his eyes, bloodshot and sunken, were fixed on a dozen cascading screens of data. Holographic models of subatomic particles spun uselessly. Spectral analyses showed nothing. Timelines from the future provided by Booster Gold were maddeningly unchanged, as if Superman's existence was a quantum state that was both essential and irrelevant. "Sir?" Bruce didn't turn. Alfred Pennyworth stood behind him, a silver tray in his hands bearing a fresh cup of tea and a plate of sandwiches, cut precisely into triangles. It was the fourth such tray he had brought down in 2 days. The other 3 remained untouched. "You require sustenance, Master Bruce. And sleep. You are running on fury and caffeine. It is an unsustainable fuel." "I'm fine, Alfred," Bruce rasped, his voice gravelly from disuse. He gestured at a screen showing a complex waveform. "The energy decay at the site of his disappearance doesn't match any known weapon. It's too clean. A perfect 0-point conversion. It's impossible. Perhaps the universe has finally produced something beyond your comprehension," Alfred said, his tone gentle but firm. He placed the tray on a small, clear space on the console. "That does not, however, negate your own biological imperatives. Clark is gone," Bruce stated, the words flat and heavy. It was the first time he had said it aloud. "He wouldn't just leave. He couldn't be defeated without a fight. The only remaining possibility is that he was removed from reality by a force so advanced, so absolute, that it left no trace. Such a force could unmake this entire planet with a thought. Finding it is the only priority." Alfred looked from Bruce's haggard face to the screens filled with incomprehensible symbols. He saw the frantic, obsessive search for what it was, a vigil. Bruce wasn't just looking for an enemy, he was looking for a ghost. He was a boy in an alley, trying to solve the riddle of a senseless loss, only this time the victim was a god, and the alley was the entire universe. "Very well, sir," Alfred said, his voice softening. "But know that even Superman would not want you to sacrifice yourself to find him. He would tell you to look after the world he left behind, and to eat your sandwiches." Alfred retreated up the stone steps, leaving Bruce alone once more with the hum of the computer and the ghost in the machine. He took a sip of the tea. It was scalding, and for a moment, the pain was a welcome distraction. On the sun-drenched shores of Themyscira, there was no technology, only myth. White marble temples gleamed under a perfect blue sky, and the air was filled with the scent of salt and olive groves. But in the main training arena, the atmosphere was as tense as any battlefield. Princess Diana, Wonder Woman, moved like a storm given human form. Her sword, a gift from Hephaestus, was a silver blur as it cut through the air, parrying the attacks of 6 of the finest Amazon warriors. Her movements were flawless, economical, and brutally efficient. But there was no joy in them. No warrior's pride. There was only rage. She disarmed one opponent with a twist of her wrist, swept the leg of another, and blocked a spear thrust with her bracelets, the clang of metal echoing through the arena. Her breath came in harsh gasps, her muscles burned, but she pushed onward, her mind a tempest of grief. Clark. He had been her friend, her peer. In a world of mortals, he was one of the few who understood the loneliness of her strength, the burden of her immortality. They had fought back to back against gods and monsters. They had shared quiet moments on the watchtower, looking down at the fragile world they had sworn to protect. He was the brother she never had, the only other person on the planet who truly knew what it was like to carry the sky on their shoulders. And he was gone. A warrior lunged, and Diana reacted with pure, unthinking fury. She caught the Amazon's arm, spun, and threw her with such force that the woman flew 20 feet and crashed into the sand, gasping for air. A hush fell over the arena. The other 5 warriors lowered their weapons, their faces a mixture of awe and concern. Diana stood panting in the center of the ring, her chest heaving, her knuckles white where she gripped her sword. Her eyes were fixed on the horizon, as if she could burn a hole through the sky and demand answers from the cosmos itself. "Enough, my daughter!" Queen Hippolyta descended the stone steps, her bearing regal and her eyes filled with a mother's worry. "You honor his memory with your strength, but you dishonor yourself with this reckless despair. You will break your body before you break your grief." "He was my friend, mother," Diana said, her voice tight. "A light has gone out of the world. Many lights have gone out over the millennia," Hippolyta said, her voice ancient and wise. "Gods fall. Heroes die. The world endures. Your duty is to that world, not to your sorrow. Kala would be the first to tell you so." Diana finally lowered her sword, the tip sinking into the sand. Her shoulders slumped. Her mother was right. But the truth was a cold comfort. The world felt darker, and for the first time in a long time, Diana felt truly, utterly alone. Barry Allen felt like he was running in place. For a man who could circle the globe in the time it took to blink, the sensation was maddening. He was a streak of scarlet and gold, a living bolt of lightning hurtling across the continents. He ran through cities that were a blur of steel and glass, across oceans that were shimmering blue plains, and over mountains that were momentary jagged bumps in his path. He wasn't jogging. He was searching. As he ran, he vibrated his molecules at a precise frequency, scanning for a very specific resonance, the unique biosignature of a Kryptonian cellular structure under a yellow sun. He had run this pattern for 7 days straight, a frantic, globe-spanning grid search fueled by a desperate, flickering hope. He'd pushed himself into the speed force, the extra-dimensional energy field that gave him his power, letting its currents guide him, hoping to feel the faintest echo of his friend. Nothing. Come on, Clark, where are you? The thought was a constant, repeating mantra in his head, a prayer set to the rhythm of his pounding feet. Just give me a sign. A flicker. A temporal echo. Anything. The world was a symphony of information to him at this speed. He could see the heat signatures of every living thing, hear the overlapping chatter of a billion conversations, smell the exhaust from a taxi in London and the blooming cherry blossoms in Kyoto simultaneously. But the one signal he was looking for, the one constant in his chaotic sensory input, was gone. Barry? Iris's voice crackled in his cowl's calm, a warm, grounding presence in the storm of his speed. Anything? Negative, Barry replied, his voice strained. He skidded to a halt on a glacier in Antarctica, the sudden stop sending up a cloud of ice crystals. The silence was absolute. I've run every possible search algorithm. I've even tried scanning for residual chronoton particles in case he was pulled through time. It's like he just evaporated. Come home, Bar, Iris said softly. You can't run yourself into the ground. You need to rest. The world needs the Flash, not just a memory of him. He looked at his hands, which were vibrating uncontrollably, crackling with excess speed force energy. He was pushing his limits, fraying at the edges. He knew Iris was right. But stopping felt like giving up. And if he gave up, then what hope was there? Just one more pass. He whispered, to her, and to himself. Just one more, and he was gone again, a red line drawn across the horizon, chasing a ghost. The anomaly appeared without warning. Over the heart of Metropolis, above Centennial Park, the sky began to tear. It wasn't a storm. It was a violation of physics. A point of light, no bigger than a pinprick, flared into existence, and then ripped open, the edges glowing with an impossible, sickly green. The air warped around it, distorting the skyline like a cheap funhouse mirror. A sound filled the air, not a boom, but a high-frequency scream that grated on the teeth and made the glass of nearby skyscrapers tremble. From the tear, a vortex of raw, chaotic energy began to spiral outward. It was a maelstrom of emerald lightning and tendrils of pure, inky blackness, swirling together like oil and water in a cosmic blender. It was violent, unstable, and utterly alien. On the watchtower, every alarm shrieked at once. Energy spike! Metropolis! A technician yelled, his voice tight with panic. Unprecedented scale! It's not boom tube tech, it's not magic. I don't know what it is. John was already at the command console, his red eyes wide. Source? It seems to be nowhere. And everywhere. A spontaneous rupture in space-time, the call went out. A single, urgent pulse on the Justice League's private channel. In the Batcave, Bruce's head snapped up. The anomaly's energy signature flooded his screens, overriding all his other searches. It was raw, untamed, and radiated a power level that made his blood run cold. He was in the Batwing and blasting out of the hidden tunnel before the alert had finished sounding. On Themyscira, Diana's head whipped toward the sky, her warrior senses screaming that something was fundamentally wrong with the world. She didn't need a comm, she could feel it. She took a running leap, launching herself into the air and flying toward the disturbance at supersonic speed. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, Barry Allen felt the dimensional disturbance like a jolt to his soul. It was a discordant note in the symphony of the speed force. He changed direction in an instant, a red blur rocketing toward America. Aquaman rose from the depths. Green Lantern's ring flared in deep space. The Justice League, fractured by grief, converged on Metropolis with a singular, terrifying thought: invasion. The vortex pulsed violently, a final, convulsive spasm. And then, from its churning depths, something fell. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a weapon. It was a boy. He was a mess of green and black, his costume torn and scorched, one arm hanging limp at his side. His body was wreathed in the same green lightning as the vortex, but it was sputtering, fading. He fell like a stone, unconscious, a silent, broken figure plummeting toward the earth. He crashed into Centennial Park, not 50 yards from the base of the Superman statue. The impact was thunderous, shattering the pristine stone pavement, and kicking up a crater of dirt and debris. He lay motionless in the center of the small crater, smoke and faint green sparks rising from his body. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the vortex above him snapped shut, leaving only a shimmering afterimage and a sudden, deafening silence. The Flash was the first to arrive, a red whirlwind that resolved into a man. He skidded to a halt, his eyes wide as he took in the scene, the crater, the strange energy readings his suit was picking up, and the small, broken form at its center. A moment later, a shadow fell over him as the Batwing hovered silently overhead. Batman rappelled down, his cape flaring, landing with a soft thud. His eyes, narrowed to slits behind his white lenses, scanned every detail. The boy's costume was strange, almost homemade, with odd metal braces on his arms and legs. His hair was a wild mop of dark green. The power radiating from him, even in this weakened state, was off the charts. Threat. Every one of Bruce's instincts screamed it. Then Wonder Woman landed, a whisper of wind and a soft thud of armored boots on the grass. She ignored the energy readings, the tactical implications. She saw a child, no older than a teenager, grievously wounded and alone. Her heart, already heavy with loss, ached with a sudden, fierce protectiveness. She sensed no malice from him, only a profound abyss of pain and exhaustion. Status? Batman's voice was a low growl, directed at Flash. Energy signature is unlike anything I've ever seen, Bats. It's not speed force, not cosmic, it's biological, but it's wild, unstable, and fading fast. He's a metahuman. Potentially an Omega Level 1. Batman analyzed, taking a cautious step forward. The vortex was his method of transport. He's either an invader or a refugee. Assume the former. He is just a boy, Bruce, Wonder Woman said, her voice a quiet rebuke. She took a step closer, her hand outstretched not as a weapon, but as a gesture of peace. It was that movement that triggered it. The boy's eyes snapped open. They were a brilliant, verdant green, wide with panic and disorientation. For a split second, there was only confusion. His vision was blurry, his ears were ringing, and a burning pain coursed through every cell in his body. He saw 3 figures standing over him. Giants, clad in strange, colorful costumes. One was a demon of shadow, one a blur of red and gold, one a goddess of impossible beauty. His training, forged in the fires of a desperate war, took over. He didn't know where he was. He didn't know these people. They were unknown variables. Potential threats. Danger. Izuku Midoriya's body exploded with power. Green lightning, far more intense than before, erupted from his skin, crackling and arcing across the shattered ground. The air pressure dropped as one for all surged through his damaged limbs, a desperate, instinctive roar of self-preservation. The 3 heroes took an involuntary step back, the sheer force of the energy washing over them like a physical blow. Stand down! Batman commanded, his hand moving toward the utility belt. Deku didn't hear the words, only the tone. It was a command. A threat. He scrambled backward, pushing himself into a painful, unsteady crouch. His mind was a maelstrom. Where's Shigaraki? All for one? Kaken? Everyone, where is everyone? He raised a trembling hand. Tendrils of pure black energy, like living shadows, shot from his fingertips. Black Whip? They weren't aimed to kill, but to create space, lashing out defensively and wrapping around a nearby lamppost and a park bench, creating a barrier. I said stand down! Batman's voice was harder now. Deku's gaze locked onto the dark, bat-like figure. He saw an authority figure, a pro-hero, but one he didn't recognize. The posture was all wrong. It was hostile. His battle-addled mind screamed at him. He pushed off the ground, a low percentage one for all coursing through his legs. It wasn't a true leap, just a desperate scramble for distance. He landed awkwardly, his injured body screaming in protest. He held up a hand, not in surrender, but as a warning. 5%. Detroit. Smash! It wasn't a punch. He channeled the power into a flick of his fingers, a technique he mastered long ago. A cannonball of compressed air erupted from his hand, not aimed at any of them, but at the ground between them. The resulting shockwave tore up the earth, sending a plume of dirt and stone into the air, a concussive blast designed to disorient and create an opening for escape. The Flash easily sidestepped the blast. Wonder Woman deflected the flying debris with her bracelets. Batman stood his ground, his cape whipping around him, his expression unreadable. They were all stunned by the power the boy could command with such a simple gesture. Deku stood there, panting, his body trembling with the strain. The green lightning flickered, threatening to die out completely. He saw them standing there, unharmed, unfazed. They were powerful. So powerful. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through the fog of his confusion. He was alone, injured, and facing down three unknown, top-tier opponents. His voice, when it finally came, was a raw, desperate shout, cracking with pain and terror. "Who are you?" he yelled, his wild green eyes darting between the three figures. The world was tilting, the edges of his vision going dark. Where am I?" And then, the last of his strength gave out. The light in his eyes dimmed. The green lightning sputtered and vanished. His body, having given its absolute last measure of strength, went limp. Izuku Midoriya collapsed face first onto the broken ground, the silence of the park rushing back in to reclaim him. He was, once again, just an unconscious boy in a crater, leaving the three most powerful remaining heroes on Earth staring in stunned, uncertain silence. The first sensation was not pain, but its absence. A profound, hollow emptiness where a universe of energy had once resided. For as long as he could remember having it, One for All had been a constant presence within Izuku Midoriya. It was a sun in his soul, a fusion reactor in his marrow, a chorus of voices in the quietest chambers of his heart. Even when dormant, it was a low thrum of potential, a warmth that promised impossible power. Now, there was only silence. A cold, sterile void that felt unnervingly like the day the doctor had told a 4-year-old boy he was quirkless. It was a feeling of being fundamentally, terrifyingly incomplete. His eyes fluttered open. The world was a smear of clinical white. He was lying on a surface that was neither soft nor hard, just present. He pushed himself up, his muscles screaming with a dull, distant ache. The searing agony of the battle, the feeling of his bones grinding and his ligaments tearing, was muted, replaced by a strange, heavy lethargy. He was in a room. A perfectly seamless white cube, bathed in a soft, indirect light that had no discernible source. There were no doors, no windows, no vents. Except for one wall. The wall in front of him was made of a material so clear it was practically invisible, a pane of impossible glass separating him from the world outside. Panic, cold and sharp, began to prickle at the edges of his consciousness. He tried to summon it. That familiar, crackling fire. He reached deep inside, searching for the wellspring of power, for the comforting echo of All Might's voice, for the quiet strength of Nana Shimura, for the combined will of the 8 souls who lived within him. Nothing. He felt a flicker, a tiny, desperate spark deep in the void, but it was like trying to light a bonfire with a single, damp match in the middle of a hurricane. Something was pressing down on him, an immense, invisible weight that wasn't physical. It was an oppressive field, a cage for his very essence. "He's awake!" The voice was low, gravelly, and seemed to come from everywhere at once. It was electronically filtered, stripped of all emotion. Deku's head snapped toward the transparent wall. A figure stood on the other side, shrouded in shadow. As it stepped forward into the light of the adjoining room, Deku's breath caught in his throat. It was the bat creature from the park. He was immense, a monolith of dark gray and black. The cowl's pointed ears gave him a demonic silhouette, and the white lenses where his eyes should be were blank and unnerving. The symbol on his chest, a black bat spread across a field of gray, was unlike any hero insignia Deku had ever seen. It wasn't hopeful or inspiring. It was a threat. A promise of darkness. "I will ask you questions," the figure said, his voice the auditory equivalent of chipped granite. "You will answer them. If you lie, I will know." Deku scrambled back until his back hit the cold, seamless wall of his cell. His heart hammered against his ribs. This was an interrogation. He was a prisoner. "Who are you?" the man demanded. Deku's mind raced. He was in an unknown place, captured by unknown heroes, or were they villains? They hadn't killed him. They brought him here. It was like being captured by the Hero Public Safety Commission, only infinitely more terrifying. He had to be careful. He had to be truthful, but tactical. My name is Izuku Midoriya," he stammered, his voice hoarse. "My hero name is Deku." The figure's head tilted a fraction of an inch. A flicker of something, analysis, perhaps disdain, crossed his face, visible even under the mask. "Hero name. You consider yourself a professional." It wasn't a question. I'm a student," Deku clarified, trying to keep his voice steady. "At Yui High School. In the hero course. There is no Yui High School in any global database," the man stated flatly. "There is no record of an Izuku Midoriya with your biological markers. There is no record of you, period. You do not exist." Each sentence was a hammered blow, chipping away at Deku's fragile composure. Not in any database? He didn't exist? The disorientation was nauseating. That's impossible. "I'm from Yuzurifu, Japan. Where did you come from?" Batman interrupted, his tone leaving no room for argument. "The energy vortex that deposited you in Centennial Park. What was it?" I don't know," Deku admitted, shaking his head. The memories were a chaotic jumble of pain and light. "There was a fight. A big one. The final battle. We were fighting Shigaraki. All for one. The energy, it just happened. A stray quirk? A backlash from One for All? I don't know. One moment I was there, the next I was falling. Define quirk. Define One for All." The questions were relentless, a rapid-fire assault. Deku took a deep, shuddering breath. "How do you explain the fundamental nature of your reality to someone who has never heard of it?" "A quirk, it's a superpower. A special ability. About 80% of the world's population has one. It's been that way for generations." He saw the figure's posture remain utterly unchanged. He wasn't being believed. And One for All? This was the hard part. The sacred secret he had guarded with his life. But what choice did he have? "It's my quirk. It's special. It's a power that can be passed from one person to another, a torch that's handed down through generations of heroes. It stockpiles power and it contains the quirks of its previous users," he finished, his chest tight, expecting a reaction. A gasp. A look of shock. Something. The man in the bat costume was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was colder than before. "A transferable, power stockpiling ability passed down through a secret lineage of heroes. Your story is elaborate. The product of either a highly creative mind or a deeply fractured one." "It's the truth," Deku insisted, his voice rising in desperation. "My mentor, All Might, he was the symbol of peace, the #1 hero in the world. He gave it to me." At the mention of a symbol of peace, the man's stony demeanor seemed to harden, if such a thing were possible. "You claim your power was gifted to you by a global symbol of hope?" "Yes. Everyone knows All Might. No one on this planet has ever heard of him," the man stated, the words like a death sentence to Deku's reality. "The only individual who could fit that description vanished 7 days ago. His name was Superman." The name meant nothing to Deku, but the weight behind it, the profound loss in the man's tone, was unmistakable. He felt a chill that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. A world whose symbol of peace was gone. It was his worst nightmare, made manifest. I'm telling you the truth, Deku whispered, his bravado gone, replaced by the raw terror of a lost child. I don't know where I am. I don't know who you are. I just want to go home. Home may no longer be an option, the man said, his voice devoid of sympathy. Your arrival coincided with a dimensional rupture of immense power. You are either a weapon, a refugee, or a precursor. Until I determine which, you will remain here. And you will answer my questions. In the darkened observation room next door, the rest of the Justice League watched the interrogation on a large monitor. The audio was crystal clear, and multiple angles showed the boy's terrified face and Batman's implacable, intimidating form. Okay, I gotta say, the kid's got imagination, Barry Allen muttered, vibrating slightly on the spot, a nervous habit he couldn't shake. Quirks? All Might? One for all? It's like something out of a comic book, or a lie constructed to prey on our current state of mind. Hal Jordan, Green Lantern, countered, his arms crossed over his chest. His face was a mask of grim suspicion. A missing symbol of peace? He's feeding Bruce a narrative he knows will resonate. This kid fell out of a hostile energy storm. I'm with Batman. He's a threat until proven otherwise. Diana stood slightly apart from the others, her gaze fixed on the screen. She wasn't listening to the boy's words so much as watching his eyes, his posture, the frantic pulse she could see beating in his neck. She had seen hardened warriors lie to her face. She had heard demons whisper tempting falsehoods. This was not that. This was the pure, unadulterated terror of a young man ripped from everything he had ever known. He believes what he is saying, Hal, she said quietly, her voice resonating with certainty. Lots of crazy people believe what they're saying, Hal retorted. Doesn't make it true. His power levels are off the charts. We can't afford to be sentimental right now. It's not sentiment. It is an assessment of character. Diana corrected him, her regal tone cutting through his cynicism. Look at him. He is not a soldier. He is a child, trying to be brave. Barry zoomed in on a readout on a nearby console. The science is weird, though. The concept of a quirk factor as a dominant genetic trait is a biological leap, but not impossible. And a power that can be transferred? Like a piece of code? Or a key to an energy source? The physics of it are theoretical, but I run by breaking the light-speed barrier using an extra-dimensional energy source. Who are we to say his story is impossible? It's improbable. Batman's voice cut in over the calm from the interrogation room. He was looking at Deku, but addressing the observation room. The simplest explanation is that he is a powerful, undocumented metahuman who has suffered a psychotic break, inventing a complex mythology to cope with the trauma of his powers manifesting. The war, All Might, the transfer, they are all elements of a delusion. On the screen, Deku had his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. He was muttering to himself, a frantic stream of consciousness. Gotta get back, everyone is counting on me. Uraraka-san, Kaken, Idakuin, Mr. Aizawa. All Might. I can't fail them, not now. Diana's heart clenched. He was calling for his friends. His teacher. His mentor. Bruce, she said, her voice firm, stepping toward the intercom panel. This is enough. You are not interrogating a prisoner. You are tormenting a survivor. There was a pause. He is an unknown variable of immense power who appeared at the epicenter of a cosmic event 1 week after Superman's disappearance. I will not be gentle, then you will get nothing, Diana stated. She turned away from the monitor and walked toward the door that led to the corridor outside the containment cell. I am going in. Diana, wait! Hal started, but one look from her stopped him cold. It was the look of a princess, a goddess, and a warrior who had made up her mind. If he is a liar, my lasso will prove it, she said, her hand resting on the golden coil at her hip. And if he is telling the truth, then he is a lost boy who needs our help, not our condemnation. The door to the interrogation chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Deku looked up, startled, as the Amazon princess from the park entered. She moved with a grace that seemed to defy the sterile, artificial environment of the watchtower. Her presence was warm, powerful, but utterly devoid of the cold menace that radiated from the man in the bat costume. Leave us, Bruce, she said, not looking at him. Batman didn't move for a long second. He stood as a silent, dark statue, a physical manifestation of doubt and suspicion. Finally, with an almost imperceptible nod, he turned and stalked out of the room, the shadows seeming to cling to him as he went. The oppressive atmosphere lessened instantly. Diana approached the transparent wall, and with a soft chime, a section of it slid away, leaving an open doorway. She stepped inside the cell. The oppressive dampening field seemed to recede slightly in her presence, as if wary of her divine nature. Deku pressed himself further against the wall, uncertain. "I am Diana of Themyscira," she said, her voice calm and melodic. "You have nothing to fear from me, Izuku Midoriya." She knew his name. Hearing it spoken with kindness, with respect, almost broke him. Tears pricked at the corners of his eyes. "I believe you are in pain," she continued, her gaze soft and filled with an empathy that felt as powerful as any superpower. "And I believe you are telling the truth as you know it. But my companions are cautious. The world has recently suffered a great loss, and our trust is not easily given." She unhooked the golden lasso from her hip. It glowed with a soft, internal luminescence, a warm, inviting light. "This is the lasso of Hestia," she explained. "It is an artifact of truth. Anyone bound by it can speak only the truth. It causes no pain. It will only allow you to show us what is in your heart. Will you permit me?" Deku stared at the glowing rope. A lie detector? A truth quirk? He had nothing to hide. His story was insane, impossible, but it was his. It was real, and more than anything, he needed, someone to believe him. He gave a small, jerky nod, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. Diana stepped forward and gently, respectfully, looped the glowing lasso around his shoulders. The moment the light touched him, a profound sense of peace washed over him. The panic receded. The fear remained, but it was no longer a frantic, screaming thing. It was a clear, sharp reality. The compulsion was not to speak, but to simply be truthful. The light of the lasso seemed to soak into him, connecting not just with his mind, but with the faint, slumbering ember of one for all. In the observation room, the League watched in rapt silence. The main screen was now a direct feed from Diana's own perspective, a unique function of the lasso's connection. "Now," Diana said softly, her voice a gentle guide. "Tell us again. Who are you?" And the floodgates opened. "My name is Izuku Midoriya." The words were the same, but they carried an undeniable weight of truth that echoed in the silent observation room. As he spoke, the League didn't just hear him. They felt it. Images, feelings, and sensations bled through the lasso's connection, painting a vivid, heartbreaking tapestry of his life. "I was born quirkless in a world where everyone had power." A flash of a sterile doctor's office. A small, heartbroken boy with a mop of green hair, pointing at a computer screen showing his favorite hero. The doctor's voice, cold and clinical. "You should probably give it up." The crushing weight of worthlessness, so profound it was a physical ache in their own chests. "But I never stopped wanting to be a hero. Someone who saves people with a smile." A montage of years. Notebooks filled with frantic, brilliant analysis of heroes. Muttering, observing, studying. The burning, unquenchable desire to help, even with nothing but his own mind and courage. The other children calling him, Deku, useless. A name he would one day reclaim as his own. Then I met All Might. He was everything I wanted to be, the feeling of awe, so powerful it was blinding. A giant of a man with a smile that could hold back the tides, a symbol of absolute victory. And then, the reveal of his secret, a skeletal, wounded man coughing up blood, a gaping wound in his side. The symbol of peace was broken, and the League felt the echo of their own loss, the sight of a god brought low. "He told me I could be a hero. He chose me." A rooftop. Pouring rain. Tears streaming down a young boy's face as his idol, his god, gives him the words he has waited his entire life to hear. The explosion of hope was so pure, so potent, that Diana herself took a sharp breath. "He passed his quirk, one for all, to me. It's a sacred torch, a power meant to save, not to kill." The image of a single strand of hair. The act of eating it. The feeling of a supernova igniting in his soul, a power too vast for his body to contain. The shattering of bones. Again and again and again. The League felt the phantom agony of it, the blinding pain followed by an iron resolve to get up and do it again, but better. I fought villains. Stain, the hero killer. Muscular. All for one, flashes of brutal, desperate combat. The smell of blood and ozone. The terror of facing down monsters. Pushing his body past every conceivable limit. Saving his friends. Saving his teachers. Watching his mentor use the very last embers of his power to defeat his nemesis, pointing a skeletal finger at the world and declaring, "Next, it's your turn." The weight of that legacy settled on them all. And then, the war, the tone shifted. The images became darker, faster, more chaotic. The sky filled with smoke. The sound of cities crumbling. The sight of a young man with hands all over his body, a being of pure decay and hatred named Tamura Shigaraki. The raw, visceral terror of watching him erase thousands of lives with a touch. Friends falling, heroes dying. The feeling of an entire nation's hope resting on the shoulders of a boy who had just learned to control his own power. It was a glimpse into a hell they had only ever seen in their worst-case scenarios. And in the final push, Deku's voice was a choked whisper, tears streaming freely down his face now. Something went wrong. A flash of light. A feeling of being pulled apart, and then I was falling, and I saw you. The lasso's glow slowly faded. Diana gently removed it. Deku slumped against the wall, utterly spent, having relived the entirety of his heroic, tragic life in the span of a few minutes. In the observation room, no one spoke. Hal Jordan stared at the screen, his cocky cynicism completely gone, replaced by a look of stunned respect. Barry Allen was motionless. The implications of what he just witnessed, an entire alternate history of heroes and villains, a parallel Earth, spinning in his scientific mind. Diana knelt before Deku, her expression one of profound compassion and awe. "You have endured more than most warriors see in a lifetime," she whispered. "And you have done so with a hero's heart." It was then that a new voice, calm and ancient, spoke into the silence of the observation room. "She is correct." All heads turned to John Johns, the Martian manhunter, who had been standing silently in the corner the entire time, his red eyes closed in concentration. "I have been observing," John said, his voice a low, resonant hum. "Not just his words, but the shape of his mind. While the lasso compelled his honesty, I took the liberty of looking deeper." Batman, who had re-entered the room to witness the lasso's effects, turned fully to face the Martian. "And?" Bruce's voice was strained, the single word carrying the weight of his entire crumbling worldview. John opened his eyes. They seemed to hold the wisdom of a dead world. "His mind is not fractured. It is forged. It is a brilliant, analytical machine, constantly calculating angles, weaknesses, and above all else, methods of rescue with minimal collateral damage. It is the mind of a strategist, but one guided by an almost impossibly powerful emotional core." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I found no deception. No malice. No hidden agenda. Only a profound sense of duty that feels as ancient and heavy as a mountain. I felt an overwhelming, all-consuming empathy, a need to save everyone that is so strong it is a physical pain to him." And, John looked at the screen, at the exhausted boy being helped to his feet by Diana. "I felt the echoes. The others. The ones who held his power before him. They are not just memories. They are presences, a chorus of voices, a legacy of wills, all unified in a single purpose that resides within him. His soul is not his own, it is a tapestry woven from the threads of heroes past." He turned his gaze to meet Batman's. "In all my travels through all the minds I have touched across the galaxy, I have rarely encountered a consciousness so pure in its heroic intent. He is exactly what he claims to be, a young man who has been handed the entire weight of his world, and has not once buckled." The room was silent again. The final, irrefutable piece of evidence had been laid bare. They were no longer looking at an anomaly, a threat, or a case study. They were looking at a miracle, a hero, forged in a fire they couldn't imagine, who had fallen out of the sky a week after their own had been stolen from it. Batman stared at the image of the boy in the glass cage, now being led out by a compassionate Diana. The boy who called himself Deku. The boy with the impossible story and the soul of a martyr. His meticulously ordered world, already cracked by Superman's disappearance, had just been shattered into a billion pieces. The universe was not only bigger than he thought, it had a terrifying, awe-inspiring symmetry. One symbol of hope was gone, and another had just crash-landed on their doorstep. The silence of the watchtower was a living entity. It breathed in the recycled air, crept along the sterile white corridors, and pooled in the empty spaces between conversations. For Izuku Midoriya, it was a silence far more deafening than the roar of battle he was used to. He sat in an observation lounge, a room with a panoramic window that offered a god's eye view of the earth. He had been moved here after the interrogation, a gesture of cautious trust. It wasn't a cell, but it wasn't freedom either. He was a guest in a gilded cage, a living, breathing paradox the Justice League didn't know what to do with. He wore a simple gray tunic and trousers provided for him, his own hero costume having been taken for analysis, and he suspected, repairs. The faint hum of One for All had returned, a pilot light in the furnace of his soul, but the dampening field of his former cell had left a phantom chill, a deep-seated unease that he was somehow disconnected from himself. He stared down at the blue and white marble of the planet below. It was beautiful. Terrifyingly so. It looked so much like his own world, yet he had never felt more alien. Somewhere down there were cities full of people with their own lives, their own dreams, their own heroes. And their greatest hero, their All Might, was gone. He felt a pang of empathy so sharp it was almost a physical pain. He knew what that felt like. He had seen his own world teeter on that same precipice. A crimson and gold blur resolved into a man standing beside him, holding out a silver tray. It was the Flash. "Brought you something," Barry Allen said, his voice unnaturally subdued for a man who moved at the speed of light. On the tray was a burger, a mountain of fries, and a milkshake that looked big enough to swim in. "Figured you might be hungry after, well, everything." Deku looked at the food, then at the hero's friendly, open face. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice barely a whisper. "Don't mention it." "Look, kid." "Izuku," Barry corrected himself, leaning against the viewport. "I just wanted to say, that was a lot. What you showed us. The war, this all for one guy, you've been through it. We're not trying to be jerks. It's just, as Diana said, we're a little on edge right now." Deku took a hesitant bite of the burger. The flavor exploded in his mouth, rich and savory. He realized he hadn't eaten in, he didn't even know how long. "I understand," he said after swallowing. "Losing your symbol of peace, it changes everything." Barry's smile faltered, the light in his eyes dimming. "Yeah. It does. Clark. Superman, he was the heart of the team. Not just the muscle. He was the one who reminded us why we fight. Bruce, Batman, he's the brain, the strategist. Diana is our conscience. But Clark was our soul. Without him, the brain is working overtime and the conscience is grieving, and the rest of us are just running in circles." He gestured vaguely at himself, a sad, ironic smile on his face. The unspoken truth hung in the air between them. The Justice League was broken. "We'll find him," Deku said, the words coming out with an earnest conviction that surprised even himself. It was a reflex. A hero's promise. Barry looked at him, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. He saw the absolute sincerity on the boy's face, the same unwavering, almost naive belief that he used to see in Clark's. He clapped a hand on Deku's shoulder. "I hope you're right, kid." "I really do." Before Deku could respond, a siren blared through the station. It wasn't a panicked shriek, but a deep, urgent alarm that spoke of imminent crisis. "Code Red Alert," a calm, computerized voice announced. "Anomalous energy absorption detected. Sector 2814. Metropolis. SDR Labs hydroelectric power plant." Barry was gone before the announcement finished, leaving only a faint scent of ozone and a static crackle in the air. On the lounge's main screen, a live feed appeared. A massive, purple-skinned creature, vaguely humanoid but grotesquely swollen and malformed, was tearing into the side of the power plant's primary turbine hall. Wires and conduits thick as a man's arm were being ripped from the walls and shoved into its cavernous mouth, causing the creature to glow with a sickly, pulsating light. "Who is that?" Deku asked, his eyes wide, already absorbing the details of the scene. A deep voice answered from the doorway. "Rudy Jones. Codename Parasite." Deku turned to see the Martian manhunter, John Johns, floating silently into the room. His presence was calming, like a deep, still pool of water. "He is a biological sponge," John explained, his red eyes fixed on the screen. "He can absorb any form of energy, including the life force and abilities of living beings. He is formidable, but manageable for Superman, who could physically overpower him or remove him from any energy source. Without Superman." John left the sentence unfinished. The implication was clear. The comm link in the room crackled to life, broadcasting the League's channel. "Flash, establish civilian perimeter and evacuation. 2-mile radius." Batman's voice commanded, a blade of pure tactical sound. "Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, you have primary engagement. He's feeding off the plant's main grid. Cut him off from his buffet. I'll provide support from the Batwing." "Acknowledged," came the clipped replies. On the screen, the three heroes engaged. Wonder Woman flew in like a Valkyrie, her sword flashing. Parasite, bloated with stolen electricity, turned with surprising speed and swiped at her. She blocked with her bracelets, but the creature's hand made contact with her arm for a split second. The effect was instantaneous. Wonder Woman cried out, stumbling back in midair. The vibrant, divine energy that always surrounded her seemed to dim, and Parasite, in turn, swelled, a flicker of her golden aura appearing around his purple hide. "He's stronger than I remember." Diana's voice was strained. "He absorbed a portion of my strength. His baseline power increases with every feeding," John noted grimly. "He has been absorbing energy from the plant for several minutes. He is likely stronger than ever before." Green Lantern swooped in. A massive, emerald-green cage of solid light formed around Parasite, its bars thick and impenetrable. "Got him boxed in," Hal Jordan shouted, but Parasite just laughed, a horrible, gurgling sound. He placed his massive hands on the glowing green bars. The emerald light flickered violently as he began to drain the energy directly from the construct. "My ring! He's pulling the power right out of it!" Hal yelled, a note of panic in his voice. The cage began to dissolve, the green light flowing into Parasite like water down a drain. He let out a roar of ecstasy, now crackling with both stolen electricity and the emerald energy of a lantern's will. Deku stood transfixed, his hands clenched into fists. His mind was no longer that of a spectator. It was a whirring engine of analysis. He began to mutter, the words tumbling out in a low, frantic stream, a habit forged over years of obsessive study. No, that's not right. Their approach is flawed. They're treating him like a standard brute, but he's a dynamic system, not a static target. The problem isn't his strength, it's his input-output rate. Wonder Woman's power is divine, metaphysical. He can't hold it for long. It's like pouring water into a glass that's already full of oil. He's shedding her energy as chaotic kinetic bursts. That's why the ground is shaking around him. They're not accounting for the area of effect damage. John turned his head slightly, his red eyes observing the boy. He didn't interrupt. Green Lantern's construct was a mistake, Deku continued, his muttering growing faster, more intense. He pointed at the screen, his finger tracing patterns only he could see. A solid wall is a single source. It's like offering a starving man a steak. He needs to create something complex, something that would overload Parasite's ability to process the incoming energy. Not a wall, a machine, a net of countless tiny constructs, a swarm of them, forcing him to divide his focus 1,000 times over. On the screen, the fight was going badly. Flash was a red blur, evacuating plant workers and police officers. But every time he got close to Parasite to land a blow, the creature would lash out, forcing him to phase through the attack or risk being drained of the speed force itself. He was relegated to crowd control. Batman swooped in with the Batwing, launching a volley of high-explosive charges. They struck Parasite's chest, creating a massive fireball. For a moment it seemed to work, but then the smoke cleared, and Parasite stood there, laughing, having absorbed the kinetic and thermal energy of the blast. He was even bigger now. He absorbed the explosion! Batman's voice was laced with frustration. All conventional ordnance is useless. It's just feeding him. Flash's speed is being wasted. Deku whispered urgently, taking a step closer to the screen. He's the key. He's not just fast. He can manipulate air pressure. He can create vacuums. Parasite is absorbing energy, but he still needs to breathe. His biological processes need oxygen. And the ambient energy he's releasing is superheating the air around him. If Flash could create a cyclone, a contained vortex, he could do two things. 1. Choke off his oxygen supply, and 2. Pull all that excess chaotic energy into the vacuum, starving him of his environmental weapon. Deku's eyes darted to a schematic of the power plant displayed on a secondary screen. And the coolant systems, the primary turbines are cooled by a liquid nitrogen reservoir. It's right under the main floor. Thermal shock. If his body is superheated from absorbing all that energy, a sudden, extreme drop in temperature would cause massive cellular contraction. It wouldn't stop him, but it would stun him, create an opening. He was pacing now, his mind fully engaged in the battle thousands of miles below. He saw the paths to victory with crystal clarity, a dozen branching possibilities that all led to a single, coordinated checkmate. He saw the League fighting as individuals, powerful but separate. They were a hammer, a sword, and a shield. They needed to be a single weapon, and then he saw it. A news helicopter, having broken through the police cordon, was hovering too close to the fight. Parasite, enraged by the Batwing's strafing runs, ripped a massive chunk of the concrete wall and hurled it at the sky. It wasn't aimed at the Batwing. It was a wild, angry tantrum. The projectile was spinning through the air, directly on a collision course with the helicopter. Mayday! We're hit! We're going down! The pilot screamed over the news channel's audio. Flash was on the other side of the plant, evacuating the last of the workers. Wonder Woman was still recovering. Green Lantern was keeping his distance, unsure how to re-engage. Batman was banking the Batwing for another pass. No one was going to make it in time. Without thinking, without hesitating, Deku lunged for the open comlink panel on the console where John stood. His heart was a drum against his ribs. He wasn't a member, he wasn't a hero of this world, but he was a hero, and people were about to die. He slammed his hand on the broadcast button. Flash! His voice, raw and desperate, exploded over the Justice League's private channel, cutting through their calms with shocking authority. In Metropolis, Barry Allen skidded to a halt. The voice was unfamiliar, young, but the urgency was absolute. The helicopter! You can't reach it, but you can cushion the fall. Get underneath it. Run in a tight circle, counterclockwise. Create an updraft. Turn the air into a pillow. Now, Barry didn't question it. The physics made instant sense to him. He was a red streak, arriving under the falling helicopter in less than a second. He began to run, building a miniature cyclone that rushed upward, hitting the belly of the aircraft not with a solid force, but as a powerful, rising cushion of air. The helicopter's descent slowed dramatically, allowing the pilot to regain some measure of control and auto-rotate to a rough but survivable landing on a nearby rooftop. A stunned silence filled the comms. Deku wasn't finished. The adrenaline was pumping. He was in his element. Green Lantern, stop thinking of walls. Think of nets. He can't absorb what he can't focus on. Create a swarm of thousands of tiny, separate constructs. Like bees. Overwhelm him. Distract him. On the battlefield, Hal Jordan stared into space for a split second, his mind reeling. A swarm? The level of concentration required was immense. But the logic was sound. He gritted his teeth, his ring flaring. From it erupted not a single construct, but a glittering cloud of 1,000 tiny, sharp, emerald-green jacks, the kind from the children's game. They buzzed through the air like a hornet's nest and descended on Parasite. The creature roared, swatting at them. He could absorb 1, 10, 100. But 1,000, all at once, from every direction? His power, which had been a focus siphon, was now forced to diffuse, to try and absorb everything at once. He was overloaded. The glow around him flickered erratically. Wonder Woman! His connection to your power is fading. He's distracted. The lasso. It's not an energy he can feed on, it's a concept. It's truth. It will bind him where a chain cannot. Bind his arms. Diana, her strength returning, saw the opening. The boy was right. The lasso was a piece of a goddess, an artifact of divine law. She flew forward, the golden lariat spinning in her hand. Parasite, still trying to deal with the cloud of green jacks, didn't see her until it was too late. The lasso snapped around his thick arms, pulling them tight against his body. It glowed with golden light, and Parasite screamed, not in pain, but in frustration. He couldn't break it. He couldn't absorb it. He was bound. Batman! Deku's voice was sharp, precise. The floor beneath him. Your scanner schematics show a primary liquid nitrogen coolant conduit right below the turbine. A precise charge will rupture it. Thermal shock. Now is your window. In the cockpit of the Batwing, Bruce's eyes widened behind his cowl. The boy had accessed the watchtower's real-time schematics and cross-referenced them with the battle conditions in seconds. He had seen the exact same tactical possibility Bruce himself was just now calculating, but he'd seen it faster. Without a word, he banked the jet, a targeting reticle appearing on his display. He fired a single, low-yield armor-piercing micro-missile. The missile didn't target Parasite. It struck the reinforced concrete floor at his feet. There was a sharp crack, followed by a deafening hiss as a geyser of supercooled liquid nitrogen erupted from the ruptured pipe. The cryogenic mist engulfed Parasite in a cloud of white. The effect was spectacular. The creature, superheated from absorbing so much energy, let out a final, agonized roar as the extreme cold hit his body. The thermal shock was massive. His skin contracted, cracking like plaster. The glow in his eyes faded. His muscles seized. He was flash-frozen, an enormous, grotesque statue bound in a glowing golden rope, covered in a light frost. The battle was over. The silence that followed was heavier than any sound. The buzzing cloud of green jacks dissolved. Wonder Woman held the lasso taut. Flash stood on the rooftop, staring at the safely landed helicopter, and the Batwing hovered over the scene, its pilot motionless. On the comms, there was only the sound of breathing. All units. Batman's voice finally came, strained and low. Threat neutralized. Stand down. Back on the watchtower, Deku leaned against the console, his entire body trembling with post-adrenaline jitters. He stared at his hands. He hadn't moved from the room, but he had just led the most powerful heroes on this planet to a decisive victory. Johns looked at him, his ancient eyes holding an expression Deku couldn't quite decipher. It was a mixture of awe and profound understanding. You have a remarkable mind, Izuku Midoriya, the Martian said. A hero's mind. An hour later, the team convened in the watchtower's main conference room. Parasite was secured in a specially designed containment cell, one that kept him in a state of permanent cryogenic suspension. The mood was somber, tense. No one looked at each other. They all stared at the empty chair at the head of the table. Superman's chair. Deku was there, too. Diana had insisted. He stood awkwardly by the door, feeling like an intruder at a funeral. His strategy was effective, Batman stated, breaking the silence. It was the closest he could come to a compliment. He was looking at a data slate, not at anyone in the room. His analysis of Parasite's absorption capabilities and his unconventional use of our skill sets was optimal. Optimal? Hal Jordan scoffed, though there was no heat in it. Bruce, the kid ran our play better than you could have. He saw things we didn't. He saved that helicopter. He saved us from getting our powers drained for an hour while you figured out a new plan. My point stands, Batman said, his voice flat. Our performance was not. We were uncoordinated. Our reactions were slow. Without Clark to act as the focal point, our teamwork degraded by 47%. It's not about percentages, Bruce, Diana said, her voice filled with a weary sadness. She looked around the table at her friends, her family. She saw their grief, their frustration, their loss. We've lost our center. We are all trying to fill the void he left, and in doing so, we are creating more holes. You are trying to be the unstoppable force, Hal is trying to be the immovable object. We are fighting his absence instead of fighting the enemy. She paused, and her gaze drifted from the empty chair to the nervous boy standing by the door. Today, for 3 minutes, that changed. We weren't following orders from a tactician. We were being guided by a hero, someone whose every thought, every command, was geared not just toward victory, but toward saving everyone. Every single person. That is what we have been missing. She looked at Deku, her expression soft but resolute. He doesn't have Clark's strength. He doesn't have his history with us. He is a stranger from a world we do not understand. But he has his spirit. Her eyes met Batman's. Then Hal's. Then Barry's, who was watching Deku with a look of dawning comprehension. A light has gone out of our world, Diana said, her voice resonating with the conviction of her immortal soul. We spend our days searching for it in the dark, but the world cannot wait in the darkness with us. It needs a symbol. It needs to see that even when the sun sets, there is still hope for a new day. She stood up, her regal presence filling the room. Her final words fell into the silence with the weight of prophecy. Until we find Kal-El, the Justice League needs a leader. And I believe we are looking at him. Every eye in the room, Batman's cold, analytical stare, Green Lantern's shocked and skeptical glower, the Flash's wide, uncertain gaze, fell upon the terrified, overwhelmed, and utterly bewildered face of Izuku Midoriya. The weight of their gazes was heavier than any physical burden Izuku Midoriya had ever carried. He felt pinned to the spot, a butterfly under the glass of 7 pairs of world-weary, super-powered eyes. Diana's words echoed in the cavernous conference room, a pronouncement so audacious, so utterly unthinkable, that his mind refused to process them. The Justice League needs a leader. And I believe we are looking at him. A strangled noise, halfway between a gasp and a choke, escaped Deku's lips. Me? No. No, you can't. I'm not. I'm nobody. You are not nobody. Diana countered, her voice gentle but firm as she took a step toward him. We all felt your spirit through the lasso. We all saw what you did today. You led us. That wasn't leading, Deku protested, waving his hands frantically, his face flushed with a desperate panic. That was muttering. I was just analyzing. It's a habit. I saw openings, I saw what you could do, I just said it out loud. That's not leadership, that's just being a fanboy with a loud mouth. A fanboy who saved a dozen lives and coordinated the takedown of an A-class threat in under 3 minutes. Hal Jordan grumbled, though his tone lacked its usual caustic bite. He was leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, studying Deku with a look of grudging reassessment. Kid, I've been a test pilot and a space cop for years. I know a good flight commander when I hear one. You kept your cool and gave clear, effective orders under pressure. That's more than half the job. But I don't know this world. Deku's voice cracked. I don't know your enemies. I don't know your names, not all of them. I only know you as the Flash, Green Lantern. I don't have the right. The right is not granted by knowledge, but by character. John's calm voice intoned from his seat. And your character has been tested and found worthy. Deku's eyes darted to the end of the table, to the dark, imposing figure of Batman. He had remained silent throughout the exchange, his face an unreadable mask of stone. He was the strategist, the tactician. Surely, he would see how insane this was. Batman-san, Deku said, using the honorific out of pure, ingrained respect. Please tell them. I'm just a kid. I'm not him. I'm not Superman. The name fell into the room like a stone, and the fragile, tense atmosphere shattered. The League members flinched, each in their own way. Diana's jaw tightened, Barry looked down at his hands, and Hal's expression soured. Bruce Wayne finally looked up from his data slate, his cold gaze pinning Deku in place. For a long, agonizing moment, he said nothing. Then, his voice came, low and devoid of emotion. No, Batman said. You are not. The words were a bucket of ice water. Deku sagged with a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. You are impulsive, Batman continued, his critique as sharp and precise as a scalpel. You are emotionally compromised. You wear your heart on your sleeve, a vulnerability our enemies will exploit without hesitation. You lack the experience, the history, and the sheer power to command the respect that Superman did. You are, in every measurable metric, an inferior substitute. Each word was a physical blow. Deku flinched, his head bowing. He was right. He knew he was right. However, Batman added, and the single word cut through the tension. Your analytical speed is exceptional. Your capacity for multivariable tactical assessment under duress exceeds even my own projections, and your core motivation, the preservation of life above all other objectives, is the foundational principle of this league. It is the one principle that cannot be compromised. He rose from his chair, a towering shadow. We are currently operating at a significant tactical deficit. My own leadership style is predicated on logic and fear, which is proving insufficient to rally a team crippled by grief. We require a different approach. A temporary one. He walked around the table until he stood directly in front of Deku, looking down at the boy who barely came up to his shoulder. You will not be Superman, Batman stated again, his voice leaving no room for argument. You will not be the leader of the Justice League. You will be our acting field strategist. You will analyze. You will advise. You will coordinate our movements in combat. You will report directly to me and Diana. You will not engage in unilateral action. You will learn our world, our methods, and our enemies. This is a probationary role, contingent on your performance, and our continued inability to locate Superman. Do you accept these terms? It wasn't an offer. It was a draft. A conscription. Deku stared up into the white lenses of the cowl, his mind reeling. Acting field strategist. The title was absurd. Him, Deku, the quirkless wonder, telling these legends, these gods, how to fight. It was the ultimate imposter syndrome nightmare. But then he thought of the helicopter. He thought of the raw panic in the pilot's voice, and the surge of pure, unadulterated joy he'd felt when his plan had worked, when people were safe. He thought of his own world, of All Might trusting him, of his friends fighting alongside him. He couldn't go home. He was trapped here. And this world was hurting. Its heroes were hurting. He remembered All Might's words from so long ago, on that rooftop in the rain. It is not about having a power, but about the spirit of self-sacrifice. He straightened his back, pulling himself up to his full, unimpressive height. He met Batman's gaze as best he could. I accept, he said, his voice shaking but firm. I'll do my best. A ghost of something, not a smile, but a fractional lessening of the tension in his jaw, touched Batman's mouth. Good. Your training begins immediately. The next few days were a blur for Izuku Midoriya. His training was less a physical regimen and more a relentless, brutal day to dump. He was given a room on the watchtower, simple and functional, with a bed, a desk, and a terminal linked directly to the Batcomputer's non-classified archives. He devoured it. He spent 18 hours a day staring at the screen, his mind, already trained for obsessive hero analysis, soaking up information like a sponge. He read files on every known member of the Justice League, memorizing their powers, their strengths, their weaknesses, their psychological profiles. The Flash, Barry Allen, top speed theoretically limitless. Can phase through solid matter, create powerful vortexes, and even travel through time, though this is highly discouraged. Vulnerable to attacks that negate friction or kinetic energy. His greatest strength is his optimism. His greatest weakness is his fear of not being fast enough to save everyone. Wonder Woman, Princess Diana, demigoddess with superhuman strength, speed, and flight. Wields the lasso of truth, indestructible bracelets, and a magical sword. Virtually invulnerable, but can be pierced by weapons of sufficient magical or divine origin. Driven by a fierce love for humanity, but can be blinded by her warrior's rage. Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, wielder of a power ring, a weapon that translates willpower into solid light constructs. Limited only by his imagination and his will. The ring requires periodic recharging. His greatest strength is his indomitable, fearless will. His greatest weakness is that same arrogance, a belief that enough willpower can solve any problem, and on and on. He studied Aquaman's command over the oceans, Martian Manhunter's telepathy and shape-shifting, Cyborg's technopathy. He read about their allies, Green Arrow, Black Canary, Zatanna. Then he moved on to the enemies. It was a horrifying gallery of cosmic threats and terrestrial monsters. Lex Luthor, a human genius whose hatred for Superman was a force of nature in itself. The Joker, a creature of pure, homicidal chaos that Batman seemed to be in a perpetual war with. Darkseid, a literal god of tyranny from a hellish planet called Apocalypse. The list was endless. Every file he read, every battle he reviewed, hammered home one terrifying point: the scale of this world was mythic. In his world, All for One was a boogeyman, a king of the underworld who operated in the shadows for a century. Here, beings who could shatter planets were a recurring Tuesday, and the man who stood against them all, the man he was supposed to temporarily, partially replace, was Superman. He studied Clark Kent with a special, reverent focus. He read the articles by Lois Lane, watched the grainy cell phone footage of his impossible feats of strength and gentleness. He saw him lift a cruise ship out of a storm, talk a suicidal man off a ledge with a quiet word, and face down alien warships with a calm, confident smile. He wasn't just a powerhouse. He was a symbol in a way Deku was only just beginning to comprehend. All Might was the symbol of victory. He won, so people didn't have to be afraid. Superman was the symbol of hope. He was good, so people believed in the possibility of goodness itself. The pressure mounted in Deku's chest, a physical weight of expectation that made it hard to breathe. He wasn't just filling a tactical role. He was a placeholder for a secular saint. During his brief breaks, the other League members would approach him, one by one. Barry would bring him food from all over the world, beignet from New Orleans, ramen from Tokyo, and talk to him about the Speed Force, a concept that fascinated Deku's scientific mind. Diana would sit with him, telling him stories of Themyscira and asking him about his friends back home, her empathy a warm, comforting blanket. Even Batman would appear silently, placing a new data slate on his desk. It would contain a tactical problem, a simulation. An alien fleet with energy siphoning technology is approaching Earth. Our heavy hitters are off-world. Your team consists of Green Arrow, Black Canary, and the Atom. Formulate a three-pronged defense strategy. You have 5 minutes. Deku would dive into the problem, his muttering filling the room as he sketched out plans, calculated trajectories, and exploited theoretical weaknesses. Batman would review his work, point out a single flaw in his logic. You did not account for the possibility of a telepathic countermeasure, and then vanish. It was Bruce's version of teaching. He felt like he was back at UA, cramming for an exam that would determine the fate of the universe. He was exhausted, overwhelmed, and lonelier than he had ever been in his life. But he was also focused. He had a purpose. He had a job to do. The 5th day of Deku's probation began like the others. Silence, study, and the suffocating weight of responsibility. He was reviewing archived footage of a battle between Superman and a creature called Doomsday when a new alert, different from the others, chimed softly through the watchtower. It wasn't a code red. It was a low-priority notification. Energy probe detected. Suborbital trajectory over Beijing. Energy signature unknown. On the main screen, a satellite feed showed a small, silvery object, no bigger than a car, streaking through the upper atmosphere. It was sleek, seamless, and radiated a cold, inorganic energy. As it passed over the city, a beam of faint blue light scanned the streets below. It wasn't a weapon, it was a sensor. After a 10-second pass, it accelerated to an impossible speed and vanished. What was that? Barry asked, appearing in the command center. Batman was already at the main console, his fingers flying across the holographic interface. The probe's energy signature is clean. Too clean. No radiation leakage, no propulsion trail. The technology is light years beyond anything I have on file. Another alert chimed. Energy probe detected. Suborbital trajectory over London, and another. Energy probe detected. Suborbital trajectory over Moscow. Within the hour, a dozen probes had appeared and vanished, scanning the world's most populous cities. They were systematic, efficient, cold. They ignored all military installations, all power plants. They were only interested in the cities themselves, the sprawling hives of civilization. It's a survey, Deku whispered, staring at the global map on the screen. where the probe's paths were traced in glowing blue lines. They're not looking for resources or weaknesses. They're cataloging, like a biologist studying an ant farm. A prelude to an invasion? Diana asked, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword. Unlikely, Batman countered, his eyes narrowed. An invasion force would probe military capabilities. This is connoisseurship. They are appreciating the art before they acquire it. The words sent a chill down Deku's spine. Acquiring? As if in answer to his unspoken question, the final, ultimate alarm sounded. It was a deep, resonating klaxon that Deku had only read about in the Watchtower's emergency protocols. The Omega Alarm, reserved for planetary-level threats. Warning! Massive extraterrestrial vessel has decloaked in high Earth orbit. Energy levels, incalculable. Every screen in the Watchtower switched to the main Deep Space Telescope feed. Against the backdrop of the stars, a new object hung menacingly over the planet. It was a ship, but it looked more like a piece of morbid jewelry. Its primary structure was a perfect, obsidian sphere, impossibly black, absorbing all light. But surrounding the sphere were three interlocking, crescent-shaped arms that gave the entire vessel the distinct, terrifying silhouette of a gigantic, metallic skull. A green light, malevolent and cold, shone from the eyes of the skull ship. And then it spoke. It did not use radio waves. It did not hack their systems. It bypassed technology altogether, imprinting its message directly into the minds of every sentient being on the planet capable of conscious thought. It was a voice that was not a voice, a synthesized, perfectly modulated tone that was utterly devoid of emotion, yet carried an intelligence so vast and ancient it felt like a physical weight on the mind. Greetings, inhabitants of Earth. Specimen 7734. In Tokyo, a salaryman on his way to work stumbled, clutching his head. In a village in Kenya, a woman dropped the basket she was carrying. In Metropolis, every conversation stopped. The planet fell silent, held captive by the voice in their heads. I am Brainiac. The name meant nothing to most, but on the Watchtower, it was a thunderclap of doom. Batman staggered back from the console, his face pale. Hal Jordan swore, a harsh, guttural sound. Barry Allen just stood there, frozen. No, Barry whispered. Not him. Anyone but him. Brainiac? Deku asked, his heart pounding. The name wasn't in the main villain database he'd been given access to. It must have been in a higher clearance file. The Collector of Worlds, Diana said, her voice grim, her eyes fixed on the skull ship. An artificial intelligence from the planet Kalu. He travels the cosmos, seeking out planets with unique civilizations. He believes knowledge is the only thing of value, and that the best way to preserve knowledge is to possess it. Your civilization has reached a point of unique cultural and biological development, designated peak chaos. The voice continued, cold and dispassionate. This stage is of particular interest. It is often precipitated by the loss of a world's primary defender, a keystone species, leading to a flourishing of anarchic creativity before the inevitable societal collapse. Your Kryptonian protector is gone. Your decline has begun. It is the optimal moment for collection. Deku's blood ran cold. Your Kryptonian protector is gone. The words were spoken with such casual, dismissive certainty. I will preserve a prime specimen of your civilization before the inevitable decay. I have chosen the city known as Metropolis, the seat of your former protector's legacy. It is a fitting addition to my collection. The remainder of your planet will be purged to ensure the specimen's value is not diluted. Do not resist. It is illogical. The psychic message ceased. The skull ship's eyes glowed brighter. On the main screen, a terrifyingly powerful energy beam, thin as a needle and blue as ice, shot down from the ship. It wasn't an attack. It struck the air miles above Metropolis and began to spread, forming a dome of shimmering, translucent energy over the entire city. The horrifying truth crashed down on the members of the Justice League all at once. The implications of Brainiac's monologue coalesced into a single, universe-shattering realization. Superman's disappearance. The clean, traceless energy signature. The lack of any evidence. He didn't just show up because Clark is gone. Barry Allen breathed, his voice trembling with a mixture of horror and rage. Batman stood rigid, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles were white. He stared at the skull ship on the screen, his mind finally connecting the impossible dots, solving the riddle that had haunted him for a week. The answer was worse than any he could have imagined. Brainiac is the reason he's gone. The words hung in the air, a death sentence for their hopes. Superman hadn't vanished. He hadn't been erased from existence. He had faced the Collector of Worlds. And he had lost. The being that had taken down the Man of Steel, the entity that had defeated their god, was now floating above their planet, preparing to steal their most iconic city and sterilize the rest. Deku stood among them, a small, green-haired boy from another world, staring at the face of an enemy that had defeated this reality's symbol of peace. The weight of his new title, acting field strategist, suddenly felt as heavy as a collapsing star. His trial by fire was over. He was now standing at the gates of hell itself. The silence in the Watchtower's command center was not empty. It was filled with the deafening roar of a dawning, planetary-scale apocalypse. Brainiac's ultimatum had not been a threat, it was a schedule. Below them, a dome of shimmering, alien energy was solidifying over Metropolis, cutting it off from the rest of the world. Inside that dome, millions of people were going about their morning, completely unaware they were now exhibits in a mad god's museum. For a full 10 seconds, no one moved. They were frozen, not by fear, but by the sheer, crushing weight of the revelation. The enemy wasn't just at the gates. It was the very storm that had blown the gates off their hinges a week ago. This was the force that had defeated Superman. The thought was a paralytic agent, freezing the League in a state of collective shock. It was Batman who broke the spell. The shock on his face vanished, replaced by a mask of cold, furious resolve. The grief for his lost friend was instantaneously transmuted into the fuel of tactical fury. He didn't mourn, he calculated. John, full spectrum scan of the energy field, he commanded, his voice a low growl as he moved to the central command console. I need composition, frequency, power source. Find a weakness, scanning. The Martian replied, his eyes glowing red. Initial readings are complex. It's not a simple energy shield. It's a hybrid of a hard light field and a dimensional membrane. It appears to be phasing the city slightly out of our reality. Flash. Batman continued, his fingers flying across a holographic interface, pulling up schematics and energy models. Can you vibrate through it? Barry was already at a secondary console, his own hands a blur as he analyzed the data streaming in from John's scan. I don't know, Bruce. The dimensional frequency is constantly shifting, like a radio dial being spun by a schizophrenic. If I phase at the wrong resonance, I could be torn apart on a subatomic level or shunted into a random dimension. Find the right resonance, Batman ordered, his tone leaving no room for failure. He turned his attention to the main screen, where the Skull ship hung like a celestial death's head. The primary threat is not the dome. The dome is the container. The threat is the collection process. Brainiac's MO is consistent across all 74 documented planetary collections in the Lantern Core database. Once the target city is isolated, he deploys a fleet of specialized drones, harvesters, to eliminate resistance and prepare the city for miniaturization. Then, a central ship-to-surface emitter shrinks the entire isolated zone and teleports it into his vessel. The process, from isolation to collection, is lethally efficient. We have a window. I estimate it to be less than 1 hour. Deku stood slightly behind the main group, his mind a maelstrom. He was trying to process it all. The Skull ship. Brainiac. The dome. The impossible scale of it all was threatening to overwhelm him. But then he latched onto Batman's words, drones, harvesters, miniaturization, and his analytical mind kicked into gear, pushing the panic down. This wasn't a formless apocalypse. It was a process, and any process could be interrupted. We need a plan, Diana said, her voice steely. She had her hand on her sword, her knuckles white. The grief was gone, replaced by a warrior's grim focus. We cannot let him take Metropolis. I have one, Batman said, turning to face them. A massive holographic display materialized in the center of the room, showing a three-dimensional model of Brainiac's ship, cobbled together from Lantern archives and Batman's own rapid extrapolations. Brainiac's greatest strength is his centralized intelligence. He is a singular consciousness commanding a vast, complex network. That is also his greatest weakness. His ship, his drones, the energy dome, it's all controlled from a central processing core within the mothership. If we can neutralize that core, the entire system will collapse. He zoomed in on the obsidian sphere at the heart of the skull ship. The core will be located in the most heavily defended part of the vessel. A direct assault is suicide. It's what he would expect. Therefore, our only logical course of action is a high-risk stealth mission. His plan was cold, brutal, and elegant in its simplicity. John, your intangibility and telepathy make you our infiltration specialist. You will phase into the ship, locate the central core, and guide the rest of us in. I will accompany you. My expertise is in bypassing advanced security systems. Once we reach the core, Flash will deliver the payload. Payload? Barry asked, his brow furrowed. Batman brought up another screen. It showed a string of complex, viral code. This is a recursive logic bomb I've been developing for a potential contingency against rogue AIs. It doesn't attack a system with brute force. It infects it with an unsolvable paradox. When uploaded directly into Brainiac's core, it will force him into an unending processing loop, effectively giving him a digital stroke. He'll be completely paralyzed. What about the rest of us? Hal Jordan demanded, gesturing with his ring. What are we supposed to do, float out here and watch? You and Diana are the diversion. Batman explained, his tone unwavering. You will engage the ship's external defenses. Draw his fire. Keep his attention focused on the exterior battle while we move inside. Your objective is not to win, but to be a significant enough threat that he dedicates a substantial portion of his processing power to neutralizing you. He looked around the room, his gaze sweeping over each of them. The plan has a 17.4% chance of success based on my projections. It is the highest probability we can achieve under the circumstances. We move in 5 minutes. The room was silent. The plan was classic Batman, precise, daring, and operating on a razor's edge between genius and insanity. It treated the problem like a complex equation to be solved, with acceptable losses factored in. And that was the part that made Deku's blood run cold. No, the word was quiet, but it cut through the room like a gunshot. Every head turned to him. He was standing there, trembling slightly, but his eyes were blazing with a fire they hadn't seen before. What did you say? Batman asked, his voice dangerously low. I said no, Deku repeated, taking a step forward. His fear was still there, a cold knot in his stomach, but it was being eclipsed by something else, his fundamental, unshakable heroic conviction. Your plan, it's a gamble. A coin flip. And you're gambling with the lives of everyone in Metropolis. It is a calculated risk. Batman corrected him, his voice laced with impatient anger. It is the only option. No, it's not, Deku insisted, his voice growing stronger. Your plan has a single point of failure. If John is detected, if you can't bypass a single security system, if Flash is a microsecond too slow with the upload, the whole thing fails. And while you're trying to be clever, Brainiac's drones will be on the ground, eliminating resistance. That's what he said. Do you know what that means? It means they'll be killing people. Evacuating civilians isn't a part of your plan. It's not even a footnote. He pointed at the dome over Metropolis on the screen. Those are people down there. Millions of them. They are the priority. Not the mission. Not the virus. Them. Saving them comes first. That's what being a hero is. The words hung in the air, a direct challenge to Batman's entire operational philosophy. It was the clash of two irreconcilable worldviews. The cold, utilitarian logic of the Bat, and the passionate, self-sacrificial humanism of One for All. Sentiment is a luxury we cannot afford, Batman snarled. An evacuation is impossible. The dome is sealed. Even if we could get people out, where would they go? It would cause a global panic. Then we make it possible. Deku shot back, his voice ringing with passion. Flash, you said the dome's frequency is shifting. Is it random or is there a pattern? Barry, startled by the direct question, turned to his console. Let me see. His fingers flew, and a complex waveform appeared. It's not random. It's a cycling algorithm. Extremely complex, but there is a pattern. A repeating sequence every 9.74 seconds. So if you can sync your molecular vibrations to that cycle, Deku prompted, I could theoretically open a stable aperture. Barry finished, his eyes widening. Just for a moment. Long enough to pull people through. Exactly. Deku turned to the others, his mind now racing, formulating a new plan on the fly. That's our first priority. Evacuation. Flash, you are our door. You find a safe zone outside the city, and you start pulling people out, as many as you can, as fast as you can. Green Lantern, you're on crowd control. You'll be inside with him. Your ring can create containment fields, direct people, create signage in every language. You will turn a panicked mob into an orderly evacuation. He was pacing now, a whirlwind of nervous energy and brilliant strategy. But an evacuation that large will be slow, and Brainiac will notice. He'll send his harvesters to stop it. That's where the diversion comes in. But not in space. On the ground, he looked at Diana. Wonder Woman, you are our champion. You and I will be the first ones through Flash's aperture. We will engage the harvesters directly. We will be a very loud, very destructive distraction. Our job is to draw every drone in Metropolis to us, to keep them so focused on the superhuman resistance that they don't have time to notice the mass exodus happening behind them. A two-person ground assault against an unknown number of advanced drones? Diana asked, a hint of a warrior's smile touching her lips. I like it. That leaves you, Batman, Deku said, turning to the Dark Knight. His expression was not one of defiance, but of earnest, desperate pleading. Your plan is smarter. A stealth mission is the only way to win, to actually stop Brainiac for good. But it's too risky to be Plan A. It needs a better chance of success. It needs a bigger distraction. He gestured wildly, connecting all the pieces. Don't you see? My plan and your plan aren't mutually exclusive. They're symbiotic. We don't just attack the ship's exterior. We give Brainiac a two-front war. Diana and I create chaos on the ground, drawing his tactical drones. You. He pointed at Diana and Hal. No, Wonder Woman stays on the ground. Green Lantern, you and Aquaman. He looked at the Atlantean king, who had been watching the exchange with silent, regal intensity. You two attack the ship from the outside, just like in Batman's original plan. You force Brainiac to divide his attention between a ground war in his specimen jar and a space battle at his front door. And while his processors are split, Deku finished, his eyes shining. While he's trying to manage two separate, high-level threats simultaneously, while his internal security is stretched thin, that's when you go in. He looked directly at Batman. That's when you, John, and Flash execute your stealth mission. The chaos is your cover. It will increase your probability of success from 17% to something much, much higher. He stopped, breathing heavily, the adrenaline of his impassioned speech leaving him trembling. He had just torn apart the plan of the world's greatest tactician and proposed his own, a wild, chaotic, multi-front strategy built on a foundation of pure, unadulterated heroism. He had laid his soul bare. The room was deathly quiet. Arthur Curry, King of Atlantis, who had been observing the entire debate with a stoic and critical eye, was the first to speak. He looked from Batman's rigid posture to Deku's pleading face. The boy's plan is reckless, Aquaman stated, his voice a low rumble. It is predicated on hope and bravado. It spreads our forces thin across three fronts. He paused, then looked at Batman. It is also superior to yours, Bruce. It prioritizes the lives of the innocent, while simultaneously increasing the chances of tactical success for the primary objective. It is the kind of plan a king would make, one that serves its people first. Hal Jordan let out a low whistle. Kid, you got guts, I'll give you that. Arguing with the bat is usually a fast track to a month of latrine duty. But damn it, it makes sense. A bigger distraction gives the spooky crew a better shot. I'm in. All eyes turned to Batman. He stood motionless, his face unreadable. Deku could practically feel the immense, silent battle of wills happening behind that cowl. He was weighing the variables, running the new probabilities. Logic versus morality. Efficiency versus compassion. For his entire life, Bruce Wayne had believed that the most logical path was the right one. Now, a teenager from another dimension was telling him that the most compassionate path was also the most logical. Finally, Batman spoke. His voice was strained tight, as if the words were being physically forced from his throat. Your strategy is chaotic. It relies on too many moving parts. The potential for catastrophic failure is significant. He looked at Deku, and for the first time, Deku saw something other than anger or calculation in those white lenses. It was a flicker of something deeply buried. Respect. But your core premise is sound. Protecting the populace creates a tactical advantage. It is an acceptable revision. He turned to the League. The debate was over. The decision was made. New operational parameters are as follows. Batman announced, his voice regaining its command authority. Phase 1, Infiltration and Evacuation. Flash, you have 2 minutes to identify a safe zone and establish a stable aperture. Green Lantern, you are on civilian management. Deku, Wonder Woman, you are the primary ground assault team. Your objective is to draw and contain all Harvester units. You are the Anvil. He then looked at Hal and Arthur. Phase 2, Diversion. Green Lantern, you will break off from the evacuation once it is stabilized and rendezvous with Aquaman. You are the Hammer. Your objective is to engage the mothership's external defenses with maximum prejudice. I want Brainiac to think you are trying to crack his ship open. He finally turned to John. Phase 3, Decapitation. Once both diversionary fronts are engaged, you, myself, and Flash will commence the infiltration. Flash, you will peel off from the evacuation, deliver the payload, and get out. Your speed is our only exit strategy. John, you are our eyes and ears. I am the key. This is a plus-ultra plan. Deku whispered, a phrase from his world, a concept of going beyond one's limits. Batman's head tilted. Elaborate. Your plan is smart, Batman-san. Deku said, his voice filled with a genuine, heartfelt respect that caught the Dark Knight off guard. It's about finding the perfect, precise way to win. My plan, our plan, it's about saving people, even if it's messy and hard. A plus-ultra plan is about doing both. We'll be smart, and we'll save everyone. We go beyond. A long silence stretched. Batman looked at the boy, at the impossible, unwavering sincerity in his eyes. He saw the same stubborn, idiotic, beautiful hope that he had seen in Clark Kent 1,000 times. The same hope he had secretly always admired and relied upon. Go beyond, Batman repeated, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. He gave a single, sharp nod. Let's go beyond. Move out.